Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to work on a viewer request. I was asked earlier today in one of our comment sections, do I have a video on a Daiwa RS2000 or something like that? And I don't, but I do have an RS2000 here. I'm going to believe that the other one is just bigger and that these are similar in design and nature. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to service this one in the hopes of helping a viewer service theirs. So this is a nice reel. This one's working fine. It does show the signs of age. We don't have the paint any longer on a lot of these pieces. I like to call that a nice patina. And some folks ask, should you repaint the reel? And that's completely at your discretion. I do not repaint them, but if I have some blistering, I do try to kind of knock that off. With, in this case, I'm using some steel wool. You can also knock it off with a screwdriver or some other things. I just don't like the appearance of blister, but I don't mind the appearance at all of patina. So we're going to call this one patina. Okay, this is a 2000 series Daiwa. This one was made in Korea, and we're going to start servicing this by taking off the exterior parts, and that begins with removing the handle. And as I take off the exterior pieces and parts, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel and everybody involved in keeping us safe during the pandemic. They're our local hometown heroes. They're all uniformed services and supply chain folks, transit system workers, teachers, everybody in our food operations, and of course all of the uniformed services. So thank you for all it is that you do. Not to exclude anybody, I apologize if in the course of my introductions I miss somebody. We all know who you are, medical workers included. Thank you for everything that it is that you do. All right, this is an old reel, so I did put a little bit of penetrating oil onto those case screws before I start. These case screws can be worked either with a Phillips head screwdriver or a flat-bladed screwdriver. I find that the flat-bladed screwdriver in that cross slot tends to work the best, at least at breaking the screw. And then once I've broken that screw, then I can go in and use the Phillips head screwdriver to remove them completely. Now when I took that handle out, I noticed there was a little rust in there, and that may concern me. The reel itself seems to be working okay, and I haven't been in this reel. This is my reel. Got it as part of one of those flea market buy a lot of reel purchases, and it's just been sitting here. And then when the viewer asked about the 2600, I think it was the RS2600, I thought I would go back and search my my work projects or projects to be done, and came close. All right, so 3 side plate screws hold that out. Quick note here is before I take anything out, I do like to throw the anti-reverse to the off position. That way if there's something that's in there like this one, it was a good thing that I just did that because this one works from a claw below. It's a good thing to do that. We have a bushing in the side case here. Actually, we just have a side case that's been honed to that bushing dimension. We have an exterior here, which is your anti-reverse, and then we have the internal, which is going to drive the pinion gear. Notice that there is a spring right here that controls the tension on the anti-reverse override. Please be careful with that spring. It tends to shoot. Know that it is there, and know that that's the position of that spring should that spring come loose. You don't have to move that for any particular reason, so I'm going to leave it right where it is, but I can tell you that in the past I've found that spring on the floor and in various locations, and just be aware that that's what's going on there. You need to remove the axle shaft to remove the main gear. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm also going to remove the spool at this time because we will want to service the drag stack when it comes around to that. So let's go ahead and do that. So if you like the hobby or the art of reel repair, or maybe you're even a shop that's working on particular reels and you're watching mine because you've got a reel that you haven't been familiar with before, well then I'm going to ask you to subscribe. That way you'll see all of the reels that I work on. I post frequently. I try to do it on a daily basis, and I've been using the YouTube Shorts lately as a way to show you some kind of unusual reel features and the like. So If you like that kind of thing, please subscribe. And if you do subscribe, hit that notification button. That way you'll see when I'm posting and what it is that I'm posting, and then you can make a decision as to whether that's something that you want to watch for. Talking about things to watch for, I always recommend taking pictures when you're working on a reel, particularly one that maybe you haven't worked on in a while or maybe you haven't worked on at all. And when you take those pictures, take the critical juncture points. That way you can know what goes where from an orientation perspective. And here's a perfect example. Here is a spring for that anti-reverse dog. And if you look at that spring, it wraps around the screw and it buries along this little stud in the side case here. Now I can guarantee you if this spring came loose, you'd be searching a long time to figure out where does that tag end of that spring go, because it's not obvious. There's no hole in the case or any kind of thing that would say that's the way that it lines up, but that's the way that it lines up. So be careful about that. Take pictures, acquaint yourself with the features of the reel before you start going and moving and doing anything, because quite honestly, if something like that gets dislodged, or you take it apart for whatever reason, let's say your dog wasn't working and you needed to clean debris behind that, well, take that picture, because you'll spend a lot of time trying to figure it out if you don't. All right, that's the side plate. You don't need to do any more with that. We've removed the axle shaft. That'll remove everything here. Kind of came out pretty easy, right? Big main gear. Back end of the main gear drives the crosswind block. That's your crosswind block. This a crosswind gear or oscillation gear. The crosswind block sits on top of that. And all we need to do on this one is a little bit of cleanup. So let's use a cotton swab. Get the dried grease out of the back of the oscillation gear or crosswind gear, call it whatever you like. There's also some old grease here. And I would say if there was an issue with this reel, that's it right there. It's just dried grease. I'm not quite sure when the last time this one was serviced. So that's the point of a service. And I do get asked a lot, well, how frequently should you service your reels? And my answer is annually at a minimum. If you're a heavy use, then go ahead in mid-season and go do it again. It doesn't take long. You'll see that this whole video with explanations and everything is going to take about 20 minutes or so. If you're familiar with your reel and you're not narrating and not taking time to make sure that the camera is focused and all that other stuff, well, then you're going to be able to do it a lot quicker, and it's well worth the results. All right, looks like we have a 12 millimeter up here. You're going to need a deep socket for that. Your flat box wrench is not going to be able to get in there. This is just a tool. It's stuck, so I'm going to go to a larger 12 millimeter socket. It's got an arm on it so that I can reach it a little bit better. And that may just take time. So while I'm searching for my 12 millimeter socket, which I just found, let me remind you that if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section. And if you leave it there, I tend to be able to answer that on a pretty quick turnaround. Email and comment section is the best way to reach me. Yeah, there's a phone number on the business card that follows. If you try and call that phone number, what's going to happen more times than not is I'm going to be working in my shop. I'm going to be doing some reel repair or maybe even a video. And if I do that repair video, well, I can't answer the phone. So it kind of goes to the back of the loop, and we kind of start again, right? Okay, well, we're just working that up and off. Now what I want to do on this one, there's a little bit of case blistering going on there. So again, I just like to knock the blisters off. I'll come back and I'll kind of rub that down with the patina and steel wool and the like, and it'll just clean it up and make it smooth. I also want to take the time now to spray down the seams of the bail. Now I get asked a lot on this, should I remove the bail for cleaning and part of the service? Well, not an annual service. The only time you really need to remove that bail is if it's not working. but in this case it's shielded. It's kind of seamed up. Not a lot of dirt can get in there. This one's flipping nicely, so you don't need to do that as a basic service. What you do need to do is clean the rest of the reel here, and we're going to do that by taking off the main shaft, the bearing, and the pinion gear. And I'm just going to get some parts out of the way now because they've been laying on the side. I'm going to put those all into my parts tray. They've been cleaned and are ready for reassembly, and the parts tray, well, it'll tell me where to go find them when it's time for reassembly. I don't have to look for them. So if you're taking the pictures, if you're organizing your parts, some people like to lay them out on a table in the order they've taken them off. That's fine. There's a number of approaches you can use, but whatever it is, just make sure that you stop for a moment, take a breath, and get yourself organized so that you know where those pieces and parts are during the reassembly process. Got a bearing on here, got our pinion gear. We should be able to pull that out. I got lucky. Yeah, I've been lucky lately. Notice that there's a little shim washer that the rotor is going to ride on the top of that bearing. So there's one on top, there's one on the bottom. Know that when you go to reinstall. Those are going to my parts tray. I'm going to soak the bearing. This reel was turning fine before we got started here, so I didn't hear any bearing noise. This is a shielded bearing. Your oil generally can work behind that shield. It's not a sealed bearing. And you can see where the grease from the main gear kind of intersected with this pinion gear. Everything else kind of got dried around it. So I'm going to take a brush and I'm going to clean all those channels out so that we can put fresh grease in there. I'm using the brush, I'm pulling it towards me, and I'm making sure that it wipes off onto the paper towel. I don't want it on my bench, and I don't want it back on the brush where the next stroke, if you will, is going to just put the old grease back onto the gear. So we'll just brush that off. We've got to inspect the teeth. All of the teeth need to be uniform and symmetrical. If you see anything that's chipped or wavy in a wrong kind of a way, well, that pinion gear probably is the cause of a lot of noise, maybe even non-performance of a reel, and it would need to be replaced. Okay, so the person that called in on this and asked me could I do a video, actually left it in the comment section, which is what I've encouraged. They've got one of these and they're going to do it themselves, and that's kind of what this channel is about, teaching folks how to do it yourself. But if you've got a reel and you would like it serviced, you don't either don't have the confidence to do it yourself, or the time, or what little mechanical skills I have to make it work, well, if you send me a note to my email on the business card that follows, I'll be happy to provide you with the reel repair information. I get a lot of these reels, and people say, well, why do you get these reels? They're just not that expensive. Who would want to invest in it? Well, a lot of the times the answer is there's sentimental value, and you can't place a dollar amount on what the service costs are versus having a reel maybe that you fished at some point in your life that meant something to you. And I'm all too happy to do these and help the memory stay on. So a lot of times I'm just servicing a memory, not a particular reel. And I'm all against kind of the modern disposable reels. I'm much more about giving the reels the second chance, which is why I name my business that way. All right, I've oiled that bearing. I've cleaned and greased the pinion gear. Now we're putting these two hold-fast screws back in. And it's basically time for reassembly of this reel. And hopefully we've shown enough about how this is done so that others can do it themselves. All right, that's the top end. Now we want to come over. We've cleaned our case. We want to go next with the oscillation or the crosswind gear. And this one gets grease everywhere, inside the post, on the back, on the teeth. It's a hard-working gear. And on the face. That's because the back slides against the case The internal slides on the stud. The teeth intersect with the back end of the main gear's teeth. And the face is where the crosswind block rides. So that's an awful lot of activity going on there. Speaking of that crosswind block, let's go ahead and get some grease into that. This is always a good one to take a picture of. Sometimes they're kind of universal and it can be easily mounted upside down. Here we know that it goes that way. And actually, we can put a little bit of grease onto the two sides that are sort of ramps that it's going to ride on. That never hurt anybody. Go ahead and do that. Then position the stud on the oscillation gear to the bottom. That way it'll give you clearance so that you can put the screw back in for the axle shaft. Come on over and do the same thing with the back of this gear. You want to get the grease onto the teeth. You want to get the grease onto the portion of the gear that's going to go through the side case. We're going to get the grease on the teeth of the main gear. Just like that. And once more, on this side, you're going to have a shim washer, so make sure that that stays there. You do not need to get grease onto the teeth here. The teeth here are for that anti-reverse dog. They're not a gear tooth that's going to be moving in any regard. Place the main gear in. Let's go ahead and get the rotor back on. There's a little bit of grease here on the inside on that trip lever. If you like, you can put a little bit of oil in here, but there's nothing really going on there. The slide is inside here. If you wanted to take that apart to grease that slide, you can. The spring is on this side. The spring is actually a coil spring. It's going to load into a hole in the back of the bail arm, come down here, coil around, and lodge on top of this screw. So if you have it apart, you're wondering how that goes, well, that's how that goes. All right, let's go ahead and put the rotor back on. There we go. Grab our rotor nut. We noticed it came off in the traditional sense where it was counterclockwise turn. Oops, I just dropped the main gear out as I did that. That's all right, put it back in. More important to get the thread started properly. If you don't start it properly, you risk cross-threading it. If you cross-thread it, chances are you will not find a replacement. All right, for whatever reason, it took a little longer than I thought it would. I think for the most part, I can probably tighten it up with this tool now. Well, it looks like I dropped the crosswind block out, so you'll get a chance to see it all over again. Crosswind block on stud, on crosswind gear, main gear. Get a little bit of grease to the side case that goes here. Remember when we did this, we took the anti-reverse dog and set it in the off position, leave it there. We should just be able to put the whole case back on now. There you go. Sometimes you have to move that arm even though you had it set off. Oh, this would be fun. Okay, let's do this again. Got ahead of myself. Put the main gear back in. Got to put the axle shaft in. Oh, that's not going to work. Clean your axle shaft off. Light little piece of grease. This is another reason why the taking the pictures is so important, and having a parts tray is so important. As soon as I looked for the case screws in the parts tray, it was obvious that we had missed this point. All right, let's put this back on. You may have noticed that I put a little bit of grease onto the tip of the screwdriver to help me with the setting of the screw on the tip so that it doesn't bounce around. That's one of those little things that we learn along the way. Let's try this again then. Again, if you're finding that you're having a little bit of a tight fit here, go ahead and swing the arm around. Swing it back. Generally it will reset. There you go. Don't force anything. If it feels like you have to force something, then something's amiss. Either there's a bad alignment, or a part's out of position, or something wasn't reassembled correctly. So don't force it. Just take a deep breath, go for a cup of coffee, come on back, take another look at it, and see if you can't remedy the situation. In this case, I know just because of the way that those anti-reverse dogs kind of seat that every now and then you need to throw that arm back and forth. So note that down as a tip there. All right, I just noticed a little bit more boat rash on the reel arm stand. I'm just going to knock that off while I can. I think it looks more like it's been maintained that way. All right, we have that anti-reverse. Handle on. Now, you can, this came out with a little bit of rust, so you can put a very light coating of grease before you reassemble that into the main gear. That'll help you get it inside of it, and it'll also prevent rust at some future date. This has got a through handle. It's got a handle screw on the other side to make that work. This is the drag stack now. I think these are Teflon drag washers in here. There may be one leather one on the bottom. I'm not quite sure. To enter and service the drag stack, pull that pentagon clip out of there, or the hexagon. Then you can remove the stack. So on the bottom of this stack is a lot of dirt. The reason why you have dirt is that there's no place for the water to go when the line's coming in, so you will get dirt in here as the water comes through it to drain out. Remember, the line's coming in the top, over the top. It's wet. It's going to come into the bowl. It's got nowhere to go but down, and as it dries, it will settle there, so you need to take care of that. All right, there was a washer below, and we have a leather washer that's pretty beat up here. In fact, it's very beat up here. So, trick of the trade, when you run out of things to do with a reel and you can't repair it any longer, keep the parts from those reels. And I've got a whole box of spinning reel washers here. So I'm just going to try and match one up here. That's a leather washer that they're using. You can use felt, you can use the Teflon washers. That one's just a little small, so we'll go for a little bit bigger. There you go, that's a little bit bigger. That probably fits exactly. And let's see if we can find one a little more substantial. That one seems a little bit more substantial. I just want to make sure that the hole is going to fit over the... It does. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one. Now this is... I think this is heavy felt. That's what this may have been, but you can see that that one's all distorted and out of shape and pressed down. This one will be much more effective as a drag washer. I'm going to put grease on it. Now, felt you would normally oil, but we're just going to rub this grease in. We're going to totally embed it in here. Just like that. Make it fresh. Seat that. The washers out of the way. So this doesn't have a lot of max drag to it because it only has the single washer. Most of these systems are set up with 2 or 3 washers, and max drag is a function of the area space of the drags. So if you don't have a lot of area space, you have very limited max drag. But then you look at this reel and you understand the size of the fish and the environment it's going to fish in, and the one plus the spring washer on the bottom is probably pretty good. I've taken off all the pitting and the like there. We're going to put that back in. Go ahead and grab the clip. The clip embeds in a groove inside. Hold to one side. This is a spring clip. It will shoot if you don't set it properly. And it's a retention clip. That's the only purpose of this. It doesn't add anything to the max drag and the like, but it certainly keeps the drags in place, keeps them where they should be. All right, you should be able to put this back on. And I'll grab that adjuster. It's another one you need to have going on square. That's not going on square at the moment. And we can tighten this down. So again, thank you if you're a first responder. Thank you all for watching. Let's press this down, make sure that we can, there we go, nice and tight hold. And it's always a good idea if you're not fishing the reel, to back the drag off so that you don't get a press down, kind of pancake washer like that over time. All right, here we go. Wow, that's a nice smooth reel. Nice and quiet. If you take that anti-reverse off, that's spinning as good as a new reel today. Very nice. There's a little bit of squeaking going on from the handle. Go ahead and use some penetrating oil there. That'll loosen that up. You can also put a little bit on the internal joint inside there to prevent some rust. So there you go. Wow. What a nice smooth little reel. Okay, that's it. That's your Daiwa RS series. This is the 2000. The 2600 should be a similar service, and all of these are well sought after reels today, even after 30 or 40 years of age on them. In this case, the patina looks great, and this reel's ready to have a second chance. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please like it, and again, please subscribe if you want to see more. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching. Please stay safe, stay well, and have a great day.